VEDA Day 17. Hello everyone. So yesterday I talked a little bit about goals and plans, specifically in the context of adoption. So I sat down yesterday evening after dinner and began reviewing what I know about the decisions that we're going to have to make and the things that we're going to have to do in order to make this become a reality. So there's really sort of the decision process breaks into a couple of different forks. So the first fork is adoption versus surrogacy. So adoption being where you adopt a child that someone else has, and surrogacy where you take your own sperm and you sign some kind of an agreement with a woman to carry a child that is at least genetically related to one of you to term. I think we've pretty much decided to not go with the surrogacy side of things. There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, just from a practical standpoint, is that it's incredibly expensive. Average costs can go well into six figures. And then frankly, you have the issue that the one donating the sperm retains some parental rights, but no one can force the birth mother to give up or relinquish parental rights, and that's probably as it should be. So you have the situation in which you could end up having to financially support a child that then you have this issue with how are they going to live and what happens if your relationship with the birth mother goes south, and what is the nature of the parenting from then on in. I mean, don't get me wrong, I appreciate all of the reasons why a birth mother might have things go south in a surrogacy, but unlike an adoption where if they decide not to match, well then your sort of obligation is terminated there. You move on to considering another birth mother, another child. If under a surrogacy arrangement, you still have paternal responsibility, and the whole thing can rapidly become a mess. So expense and then complication afterwards. And I guess there's the other side that I don't necessarily, and Bobby and I are together on this one, feel the need to pass on our specific genetic information. The purpose for adoption is not that. It's to raise a child and give them the opportunity to become a happy, healthy, and productive member of society. Moving forward and saying, okay, well then adoption is really where we're going. Then the next major decision is really what kind of adoption to pursue. So there's three main types. There's domestic, private, international, and foster care. So in a domestic private, typically you work through an agency or an attorney, and you adopt a child at birth. And I'll talk more about that in detail. The second option is international, where you go through an agency and you adopt either an infant or a toddler or even school-age children from overseas. And then the third option is that you go through Child Protective Services and you adopt a child out of the foster care system. Usually such a child will be older and in many cases may have special needs, although you could obviously get a special needs child in any of these configurations. So those sort of three options. A big part of that decision comes along with whether or not we want to adopt an infant or a slightly older child. Because basically, if you're going domestic private, then you're really talking about infant adoption. So the next decision that we have to make, and I won't say it's been made yet, is are we looking to adopt an infant or are we looking to adopt an older child? Because then that sort of constrains which of the three options you're going to go with from an agency standpoint. And this is tough because on the one hand, if you go with infant adoption, then you have the primary influence from the get-go on how this child's going to develop. So you don't really have to worry about attachment issues. You don't have to worry about overcoming abuse or neglect or any sort of unfavorable circumstances that the child may have had. You're essentially, in the way it works in most of these places, you're we're taking the child home from the hospital. So whatever does or doesn't happen, that's sort of in your, say control, maybe control is too strong of a word, under your influence. Of course, that doesn't mean that your child won't still have some issues that you're going to have to overcome. So that's something to think about. You know, when you consider adopting an older child, though, you know, there's the downsides, obviously, that, you know, you may be dealing with a situation where there's been abuse or neglect, or some other problems. Certainly, you're going to have to overcome any kind of attachment issues that the child's had with either their birth parents or with prior caregivers. But, you know, in a sense, these are the kids that often are never placed. You know, there's not to be too Machiavellian about it, but, you know, if you were to graph market value versus time, then certainly market value of a child, and I know this just sounds awful, but, you know, anything that is in scarce supply has value, and it's measured by the subjective willingness of people to pay the price to make it happen. But that value is monotonically decreasing with time. So it's not so much that we'd be looking to do something cheaper per se, but, you know, as time goes on, the likelihood that a child is going to be adopted falls at that same monotonically decreasing rate. So, in a sense, you may be doing, I don't know, more good. It's hard to quantify that. That's not a, you know, that's more good, less good, good of a different kind. You know, value can't be measured in units the way length, width, or time can. So, and there's really no right answer to that question of going with an infant adoption or an older child adoption. In the end, if you're doing an infant adoption, in any case, these kids would have had to be placed. So you're helping in that regard. So Bobby and I have to talk a little bit more about that. You know, there's other side to it too. I mean, yes, an older child adoption costs less money typically, because typically you're taking them out of the foster care system. That, you know, maybe just a few $1,000s, and there's all sorts of credits available for that kind of thing. But whereas a domestic private adoption can, by the time you're all done, take you close to $40,000, because you're typically going to be responsible for all or part of the birth mother's living expenses and health care during the term of their agreement, and also typically for about 6 weeks after birth. So you have that situation as well. So we got to think a bit through that, and I'm not sure where we're going to come down on that issue. So stay tuned for more info. And I think I'll stop it there. So that's the first couple of decisions that we have to make. And I think I may have more on this as we figure out more. At any rate, that's where it is today. It's a little overcast today, but I really do like these morning walks. You know, I do about 2 miles every morning, and you know, it tends to give me a little bit of time to think through things and get myself going for the day. Anyway, I'm out, and have a great day.